Now, the BuckeyeXtra podcast with Joey Kaufman and Rob Oller from the Columbus Dispatch.
Hey, welcome to the BuckeyeXtra podcast. Standing in for Joey Kaufman, the Ohio State beat writer, our annual welcome. And we do welcome you. We open arms to Matt Stout, who is a Michigan man, a true Michigan man. Look at that back. Well, I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if this is going to be video or just audio, but behind Mr. Stout, who's wearing his Michigan wrestling sweatshirt hoodie. He wrestled for the Wolverines. There's like every kind of doodad, knick-knack, memorabilia. He actually also has a little picture, a little something, knick-knack of a stormtrooper.
That's right.
Yeah. Is that Connor Stallions? Does he wear that on the sideline?
It could be Connor Stallions, or we're gonna open with Connor Stallions. You're going hot out of the box this year. I mean,
well, we've kind of moved on from O'Connor. I mean, he's been found to be guilty. You're a attorney. So
was he found guilty? You know, I mean,
not in a court of law, not in a court of law, but whatever. The NCAA
court of Ohio State public opinion, he was found guilty.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. That's fair. So we've got the game coming up Saturday. What is that? The 20-something.
29th. The Drive for 5 is what we're calling it.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Drive for 5. I'm in a tough spot because we have to make predictions, and I think they have to be in by today, Monday. So before the coaches talk, before we know the injury update. All I know at the moment is that Ohio State's two best receivers, maybe two of the best in the nation. Well, they are two of the best in the nation. Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate are banged up. They're injured, or are they? And
I hope they can see this.
Cheers. Wham, wham, wham. Are they going to play? So if they aren't going to play, and it's an unknown, my guess is they will both play. To what extent and how effective they are, I don't know. But Tate's missed 3 games. Smith sat out the last game and only played half of the UCLA game. If they're out, the Buckeyes are in a bit of trouble. And so based on that, I might have to pick the maize and blue. I have not 4 years in a row I picked Ohio State. It was close. It was,
Keep picking Ohio State then. Keep picking Ohio State.
Yeah, well, I picked Ohio State, and how's that working for you? So, I'll take a total abuse at home on this if I pick Michigan, or maybe it'll be the reverse psychology of Oller pick Michigan, because maybe the fortunes will change. But hear me out, and we're kind of jumping right into the prediction thing here. Usually we save that, but this is what people want to know.
Michigan has their own injury problems. You are aware of that, right?
Oh yeah, no, I'm not using it as an excuse.
I know. I'm just saying they got their own question marks to neutralize that. Obviously Justice Haynes is out for the year,
right?
And Jordan Marshall didn't play this last week. Now they say he's going to play, but once again, you just don't know.
Come on, they'll shoot up that shoulder. You know that.
Yeah. And then Max Bredesen, who might be the heart and soul of their offense, probably is, went down with a lower body injury Saturday and was seen in a boot. So that would be a huge blow to them. So they've got their own problems.
Yeah, Ohio State really. Their only significant injuries are the 2 wide receivers, maybe a 3rd wide receiver. Brandon Innes kind of was grabbed his shoulder, but Ryan Day said he would be fine for the game. So the skill positions, at least at wideout, are a question mark. And the reason that's important is because of 13-10 last year. Buckeye Nation still hair on fire over the play calling, over the conservative approach. Ohio State says, the apologists to a certain point say, well, Will Howard was concussed. He was never the same, blah, blah, blah. Did that have some impact? Maybe. Missed field goals. But mainly it was play calling. Ryan Day got out.
Yeah, and Ohio State should thank Michigan for that game because it propelled them to the national title.
It absolutely did. And,
which,
some Ohio State fans will refuse to see it that way, but I've been saying that all along from day one, that they do not win a natty if they beat Michigan. So thank you, Michigan. You'll never hear those words from Ohio State fans come. But anyhow, without the two receivers, they're left with Max Clare, who's a tight end, who's really good, but you can defend that. And then backup receivers who have not proved anything. So then you're defaulting to a run game, which is the strength of Michigan's team, I think, is run defense. They're ranked number 12 in the nation. I want to hear from you. What is their overall strength? This team does not look spectacular to me, but that hasn't mattered necessarily for at least 3 of the last 4 years or 2 of the last 4. So any Ohio State fan who thinks you're just going to go up there and, we have more talent, we're better, of course we're going to win. Well, that's a broken record. We've heard that for, at least 4 years. So I think it's a pick 'em. I think on paper, Ohio State should win, but that means nothing or very little. And the game's in Ann Arbor. Michigan I don't know if they're playing better. I'm going to turn this over to you in a second. You can just give us a summary. But like Ohio State, the one similarity is neither team has really played anybody of late. The schedule has been very weak, especially for Ohio State. They have not played a team with a winning record since Illinois. So what do you know? What do you have? You don't know, really. So will Michigan be a shock to the system? Possibly. All right, let's talk Michigan. We've talked Ohio State injuries. I think those guys will play. I think this has been, some load management going on with Ohio State. But if you're Michigan, what do you fear about Ohio State? Nothing, probably. And on your own team, what's the strength of the offense and defense?
Well, I think I said you in a text, they're 9-2. They're the most mediocre 9-2 team in America. They haven't played anybody either. The 2 good teams they played were Oklahoma and USC, and they lost both those games. Now, both those games are on the road, and Michigan has historically, at least in the last 30 years, been a bad road team against good competition for the most part. They haven't won on the West Coast since 1989 in the regular season. That's only like 7 games, but they just can't win on the West Coast. So that USC game makes sense. The Oklahoma game, they're 6-12 on the road against good Power 5 opponents since 1995. So they're just not good teams. So those games are explained. So they're not a great team, really, I don't think. Offensively, you've got Bryce Underwood, right, who is an 18-year-old freshman. And when I say 18-year-old, he turned 18 at the end of August, right? So he's going to have a freshman season, and that's what he's had. A lot of ups and downs. He's played better the last 2 weeks. The strength of Michigan on offense is their ground game. Their offensive line has done a very good job and really come together over the second half of the season. But once again, they might be trotting a third-string tailback who's a walk-on out there, and Bryce Kudzel.
Yeah, so 100 yards versus.
He did, and I like the way he runs. I really do, but he's not Jordan Marshall, who's out of Cincinnati Moeller, and he's not Justice Haynes. So, but the ground game now, they haven't faced a defense like Ohio State's the number 1 ranked defense in the country. So that offensive line might be in for a rude awakening on Saturday. We'll have to wait and see. They did not have a passing game last year coming to this game. They threw for 62 yards, 61 yards. I don't remember. They had no playmakers on the outside. They've got that this year. And Andrew Marsh, who's a true freshman who has really come into his own, they flipped this receiving. It flipped a stat up during the Maryland game Saturday that he's got more receiving yards maybe in the last 5 or 6 games than Jeremiah Smith. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith didn't play this past weekend. But going into the game, he had more receiving yards. He is a player. He reminds you of Anthony Carter. For those who can go back, the greatest of them all to me, Anthony Carter. He reminds you of him, the way he moves with the football.
Okay.
And then Donovan McCulley, who was at Michigan, transferred to Indiana and is now back at Michigan. He was considered to be the number one receiver coming into the season, and he's a good playmaker as well. But Marsh has taken his spot in that role. So
what about this Marlon Klein? What's Marlon Klein? He's a tight end?
He's a tight end. He's been hurt a lot of the year, but he's a player too. I mean, he had some nice catches, at least one nice catch on Saturday. Their other tight end has been out forever, and we don't, I assume we're not going to see him. That's Hogan Hansen. So, but they've got some other freshmen that have done well, and Zach Marshall and Zach Tonelli. So their offense is much improved from last year. It was awful last year coming into this game. Defense is not as good, primarily because you don't have Mason Graham, who's not playing for the Browns and doing a good job for them, and Kenneth Grant, who was drafted in the first round by the Dolphins. Those guys are gone, and the line's not as good. There's been some questionable substitutions on defense by the defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, in terms of, Derek Moore has 11 sacks, but has not been getting a ton of snaps. There's questions maybe he wasn't healthy, and maybe he's finally getting healthy. Another head scratcher is Ernest Hausman, who did not make the trip to Northwestern, who's probably been their most consistent defensive player. And we're not even sure if he's on the team anymore because there's rumors that, he wants to become a priest, and he decided at game, 10 that he's done with football and is going to focus on the priesthood. And there's some cryptic messages all over. So that's a big variable too, because if he's not playing,
that is a storyline that I could sink my teeth into there.
Yes, there were some cryptic quotes on posts on social media by him. So we don't know if he's playing this weekend or not, but he did make the trip to Northwestern. So that would be a huge loss. Jayshawn Barham is a good player, but a little erratic. He's not disciplined at times. And then the DBs, they've been okay. Jair Hill has played well, but then didn't play well against Maryland. A concern was there were all kinds of open Maryland receivers on the field Saturday, and they dropped balls or the quarterback did not get the ball to them. Obviously, Julian Sand, with the receivers he has, even if he's playing with his third and fourth receivers, is going to expose that. And they have not had much of an organic pass rush, which is why, Michigan won the game last year because they controlled the line of scrimmage, right? We can talk about Ryan Day's bad play calling, but they controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball enough to win that game. I'm not sure that can happen this year. That's a quick summary. And Dominic Zavada, their All-American place kicker last year, has a bit of the yips this year. And that's concerning. He missed another short, 30-some yard field goal this weekend. That's 2 in a row, 2 consecutive weekends. I think he's missed 5 field goals this year. That's concerning because he was automatic last year, and he is not automatic this year.
Yeah, and Fielding, Ohio State's kicker was not automatic. Missed the field goals, the 30-yarders that really were very costly. I look back at last year's game, Matt, and Ohio State, everything, the only way Ohio State loses that game was the way they lost that game. They had to try to run the ball. They had to shoot themselves in the foot. I'm not saying Michigan didn't deserve to win. I'm just saying that the game had to go a certain way.
Yeah,
for Michigan to win, and it went almost.
Michigan was not going to win a shootout with those guys because they had no offense.
It went almost exactly that way. You had the missed field goals, you had boneheaded coaching, just everything. If Ohio State just plays the way it did in the playoff or close to that, I think they win the game. But as you said, it kind of propelled them to the national title. So again, thank you, Maize and Blue. Sherrone Moore. Let's talk about him real quick. What's the vibe there? It's hard to replace Jim Harbaugh. In both personality and success. It took him a while to get it up and running. We won't go down the Connor Stallions road, but it's he walks away, Moore steps in. Is it kind of a lukewarm, a little better than that vibe for Moore up there?
I think it depends on the fan base, what part of the fan base you're at, much like Ryan Day, right? There's some people that still want Ryan Day fired because he lost 4 years in a row to Michigan, even though he won the national title, right?
Right.
I consider myself a rational fan, so I think, we're still waiting to see. certainly, they're 9-2 this year. They're playing a true freshman at quarterback. They lost some key players on defense. I think if you would ask most Michigan fans at the beginning of the year, if you're 9-2 going in the Ohio State game with a road trip to Oklahoma on there and a trip to USC. Now, granted, they've missed Oregon and Indiana, and some of the other traditional powers like Iowa. But anyway, I think
so did Ohio State, by the way.
Yeah, well, so did Ohio State, and that's a whole nother topic of discussion, which we can get to. You already said that neither team has really played anybody, right? So, but back to Sharon Moore, I think people would be happy with that, and I think 9-3 people would be happy with that. Obviously, you don't want to lose to Ohio State, but 9-3 with, they're the youngest team in the Big Ten. Now, I'm not sure that means anything anymore either, because you got to retain all these guys, right? You can't lose them in the portal. You're going to have to come up with money to keep them, or they're going to go somewhere else. But, their offensive line is really young, absent their starting center. They lost, Evan Link, returning tackle on that line, and they've still done very well. And once again, they got a freshman quarterback with a freshman receiver and basically a redshirt freshman tailback in Jordan Marshall. So to answer your question, I think the jury's still out, but, the early returns are okay. And we'll just have to wait and see. There are some things that have bothered, fans. There's been some time management issues during games. The Northwestern game was a perfect example. They called timeout at the end of the game, and basically had they not gotten a first down, Michigan, then Northwestern would have gotten the ball back.
Right.
With a chance to, you only had to kick a field goal because Michigan was only up by 2 points after that field goal. And then there was a Hail Mary at the end of the first half against Nebraska where they mismanaged the clock and allowed them to do that. So it's not like there's not concerns, but I think it's too early to tell. What people forget, everybody loves Jim Harbaugh now, right? The last 4 years, he was on fire, right? Or the last 3 years, rather, he was on fire. But from 2017, after the spot game, which that team was really good, from 2017 to 2020, Michigan was a little bit incompetent in big games and in situations. So much that people wanted him gone.
Right.
They didn't manage the clock well. They couldn't manage tempo when other teams ran it against them. I'm not sure Michigan can manage tempo now under Sharon Moore. So there was a lot of things that you're just like, what's going on here? Like, he lost 5 miles an hour off of his fastball, and it's time for Jim to move on. So people seem to forget that. The other thing is, in this day and age, everybody wants instant, national titles. It took Jim Harbaugh how many years to win a Big Ten title?
Right.
He started in 2015. He didn't win one until 2021, and all the Ohio State fans will claim he only won it because he cheated. Okay, and my response to that is 300 yards on the ground, but against Ohio State in 2021. I know it was snowing that day, but still. Anyway, so my point, that's a long way of saying I think the jury's still out, but I think so far there's been improvement in year 2, and we'll see what year 3 holds. But, he's going to be around for at least 3 or 4 years. So,
well, based on 4-0, which, it's not going to be 20-0. They're not going to win the next 16, but it's got to change at some point, at least a blip. Even with Jim Tressel during that era, I think that Michigan won in 2003 after Ohio State's national championship. Now that was the only
time they won. Yeah,
the only time they won, and they didn't beat Urban Meyer. So it can keep going. I'm not saying that, but I think that the consensus, at least among the writers, is that Michigan's definitely inside of Ryan Day's head. What that means, what that looks like, whether he learned anything in the meeting, this big meeting after the Michigan game last year, where it was a players only meeting plus Day, and they pretty much teed off on him. A couple of guys, not necessarily starters, said, your pride got in the way. Why did we are a team that throws the ball. We're a pass first team. They had a good running. They had Quinshon Judkins and Trevion Henderson who were lighting up the NFL pretty well, but still they were a team that threw the ball better. That was their identity, and they went away from that. And so in this meeting, it was fingers were pointed. At the end, they had a come to Jesus prayer time, kind of galvanized the team, and they went on. Has Ryan Day learned from that? is he going to go into the Michigan game saying, this is our identity, let's throw the ball? Now, it depends if the receivers are healthy or how healthy. And I wrote something a little tongue in cheek that the worst thing that's happened for Ohio State fans the last couple of weeks is Ohio State's run the ball well. So it's like if you're Ryan Day, hey, we can run the ball, and so we're going to try to run the ball again into the strength of Michigan's defense, into the teeth of it. They're not as good on the defensive line as they were, but they might be good enough. So that's where this is. Is there a bounce in the step up there in terms of, well, we've won 4, of course we're going to win the 5th, or there's definitely no fear of Ohio State, not that there ever was, but there might have been a resignation during at least the urban years, some of them.
I still fear Ohio State.
Well, the numbers, that defense, Ohio State's defense, is legit. Now they haven't played anybody, and Bryce Underwood is the type of quarterback who can run a little bit. I wouldn't say he's incredible runner. Maybe you dispute that, but he's dangerous enough, and that can cause some problems for Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously you want to be going into the game having won 5 straight, not be going into the game off of a loss or sort of stumbling in. Right. So certainly there's that. I mean, the last 4 years have made you believe that anything can happen. Right. I think Michigan was better in 2023 and they won the game. But the other 3 years, I think, I went into the game thinking Ohio State was going to win, especially last year. I thought they'd win by 3 or 4 touchdowns. They were favored by 3 touchdowns. So, there's optimism, but there's also recognition that Ohio State is really good. Yeah. Their defense is really good, and they have, unbelievable playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. Even without those wide receivers, I think they have that. Sayan's been unbelievable this year. The difference too is, we talk about those Trussell years and those Meyer years where Michigan couldn't win. I mean, and then the last 4 years, Ohio State always seems to have more talent than Michigan, right? So Michigan has to overcome that as well. Now the game's in Ann Arbor, so that makes you feel better a little bit. Although the game was in Columbus last year, and I thought there's no way Michigan's beaten a much better Ohio State team in Columbus, and yet they did that. So, it has to turn again at some point in time and go back to even. I hope it doesn't happen this year. Yeah. Here's an interesting thought. Michigan beats Ohio State. I'm not sure Michigan even gets in the playoff by beating Ohio State, but they probably do, right? That bumps Ohio State probably down into a non-bye position. What are the chances they have to play each other again in the playoff right away? I mean, I think that there's a possibility of that because Michigan would be a low-seeded team because they're barely going to get into the playoff, and Ohio State would be in that 5, 6, 7 range. Is that a possibility? I think it very much is.
Yeah, and we've talked about this in past episodes being one a year. I think I don't really like that idea, but the novelty of it being the first time that's ever happened would be huge. It would get hyped beyond belief. After that, down the road, not so much. In the future, they could play 3 times. We've talked about this. Right. Potentially unlikely, but it could happen. But to your point, I think Ohio State, if they lose to Michigan, I think I have this right. They need Indiana to lose and maybe Oregon to lose. And
Michigan
needs help.
Michigan needs help. They got to beat Ohio State, and then Oregon would have to lose, I think. Because they wouldn't get in with Indiana losing. I think that's the formula that Michigan needs. Beat Ohio State, Oregon loses at Washington. Not an easy game for Oregon.
Correct.
And I think actually that's Ohio State's most impressive victory this year.
It is
their 24-6 win at Washington, where they had won 20 games in a row or something like that at home. Right. I don't think it's a Texas game. I think Texas, you never know how good the SEC is, but Texas actually outplayed Ohio State in that game. And, it's the first game of the year. It's in Columbus. It's Arch Manning's debut. He wasn't very good. I think Ohio State's best win is against Washington. After that, in Texas, you're scrambling to find good wins for Ohio State, right?
Yeah.
Michigan, I don't know what their best win is. I mean,
Right.
I guess beating Washington at home, but there's road Washington and there's home Washington, and those are two different things. Their best win's probably beating Northwestern, even though they had a -5 turnover differential.
Yeah.
I think the statisticians couldn't find that ever happening in any college game, at least in the last 25 years, where a team was -5 in turnovers and still won the game.
Hard to believe.
So, yeah. So
all right. We have just a couple minutes here, like 5 minutes left. Quick take. This isn't Ohio State, Michigan, but it kind of is, on this whole Cal Health deal, looking to invest whatever $2 billion into the Big Ten, and Michigan and USC are holding out on that, which I totally understand. I did find it interesting that Michigan said, hey, if we don't like the situation, we'll leave the Big Ten, which that to me is, there's a difference between Notre Dame going solo and Michigan or Ohio State going solo, or even Texas going solo. I think Notre Dame is a one-off. So to become independent, I don't buy that. But what's your take on this whole thing? I don't know if fans are up to speed. Maybe you're the lawyer here. What's your thought on whether Michigan should get with the program or not?
I don't know why Michigan would ever agree to this. I don't know why Ohio State would ever agree to it. I don't know why any of the marquee brands would ever agree to it, because all it's doing is helping the lower brands, right? Because it's getting them cash that they don't have now to help them out. And basically you're selling the rights of the Big Ten off, and you're never going to get that revenue stream for a cash infusion now that none of the marquee programs need. Now, I was in the press box the last time I was up there, and a former athletic director stopped in, who I know, and he was talking about it. And he's like, I've been evaluating this for Michigan, and I think it's a good deal because it's a pension fund as opposed to a private equity firm, and the return required is a lot less. And he seemed to act like Michigan was going to be on board, and then all of a sudden it came out that they weren't, that they were getting on board, rather. Up to that point, they weren't on board. So it's kind of interesting. I think it's a bad idea, but who am I? I'm just some guy in the street. But if I were Michigan, I'd hold out. But you're not leaving the conference either. So I mean, that's a regent popping off. Probably, I think that's one of the regents said that. You're not leaving the Big Ten. You were one of the founding members, in 1896. You won your first Big Ten title in 1898 by beating the University of Chicago 12-11. And on the train ride back, little Louis Elbel, as Bob Buford would say, wrote the victors. So you're not leaving the Big Ten. So one of the greatest college fight songs there is. It's definitely top three. Definitely. Well, you got Notre Dame, Michigan, and what else you got? USC is pretty good. Yeah, true. Yeah. USC is pretty good. I mean, Wisconsin's legendary. I don't like it as well, but I like Oklahoma's. Oklahoma's very good. Yeah. I mean, I like Ohio State's. It's good. They seem to have a bit of an identity crisis because they refer to themselves as Ohio in it instead of Ohio State. Maybe Brady Oak was right. Oh my God. So. Yeah. Go Bobcats. Yeah. All right. Well, it's going to be a great game. Weather looks like it's going to be cold, mid upper 30s. I hope there's a little bit of snow. I hope there's snow. You can't throw the ball in the snow as well, right? Isn't that why Michigan won in 2021? And that because Ohio State had the flu? Yeah, they had the flu. The reasons? Flu, Connor Stallions, all that. You know the deal. So you're going to pick Michigan? Is that what you're going to do? I didn't say that, but I don't think you should stop your streak. You don't want to be unloved at home. I'm tipping. I'm on the tipping point here. Well, thanks. I think the Buckeyes by 3 touchdowns. Okay. Thanks for joining us. Always insightful. UA's Upper Arlington's wrestling coach does a fine job there. Good man, Matt Stout. Thank you again. Hey, thanks a lot. Go Blue.